She sat there trembling, mascara streaming down her cheeks, as the words echoed in the quiet café, "You're just too fat for me." But what happened next when a stranger rose from the table beside her would change not just her evening, but the entire course of her life. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. The wine glass shook in Eden's hand as she tried to process what she'd just heard. Across from her, Trevor Hutchinson was already standing, tossing a $20 bill on the table, like he was paying for damaged goods. "That should cover your water," he said, his voice cutting through the soft jazz playing in the background. "Maybe use the rest to buy a gym membership." The words hung in the air like shards of glass. Eden's carefully applied lipstick, the shade she'd spent 15 minutes choosing, now felt like a mockery painted on her trembling lips. She'd arrived at Rosewood Café 40 minutes ago, full of hope. She'd checked her reflection 3 times in her phone camera, smoothed her royal blue dress, and practiced her smile. I don't understand," Eden managed to whisper, her voice barely audible over the clink of dishes from other tables. "My photos were recent. I didn't hide anything." Trevor rolled his eyes, checking his Rolex, as if this conversation was wasting precious time. "Look, I'm a personal trainer. I have a reputation. Being seen with someone like you would be bad for business. You're just not what I expected. You're too—" "Stop," the voice came from the table next to them, deep, steady, and carrying an edge of controlled anger that made Trevor pause mid-sentence. Calvin Rhodes stood up slowly from his corner booth, his 6'2" frame unfolding with deliberate calm. His brown eyes were fixed on Trevor with an intensity that made the smaller man take an involuntary step back. "I'm sorry, is this your business?" Trevor scoffed, trying to recover his swagger. "It is now," Calvin said quietly, moving closer. His hands were steady at his sides, but there was something in his posture, protective, solid, that made other diners turn to watch. "You've said enough. Leave." Trevor laughed, but it came out nervous. "Oh, what are you? Her boyfriend? Makes sense. Losers stick together, right?" Calvin didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he moved past Trevor entirely, pulled out the chair opposite Eden, and sat down. His eyes met hers, warm brown meeting tear-filled green, and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe, or recognition of pain. "May I?" he asked Eden gently, ignoring Trevor completely. Eden nodded, too shocked to speak, tears still rolling down her cheeks. Calvin turned back to Trevor, who was still standing there, mouth slightly open. "She's beautiful," Calvin said simply. "You're just too shallow to see it. Now leave before I forget that my daughter taught me to use my words instead of my fists." The mention of a daughter seemed to confuse Trevor further. He looked between them, muttered something about pathetic, and stormed out, his expensive cologne lingering like a bad memory. The café fell silent for a moment. Eden could feel eyes on them, some sympathetic, some curious. Her cheeks burned with humiliation. She wanted to run, to disappear, but her legs felt frozen. "I'm sorry," she whispered to Calvin. "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did," Calvin interrupted softly. He pulled a napkin from the dispenser and handed it to her. "No one deserves to be spoken to that way, especially not on what was supposed to be a nice evening out." Eden dabbed at her eyes, smearing her mascara further. "I must look like a mess." "You look like someone who's had their heart bruised by someone who didn't deserve to be in the same room as you," Calvin said. "I'm Calvin, by the way. Calvin Rhodes." "Eden," she managed. "Eden Morrison." "Eden," he repeated, as if testing how her name felt. "Can I ask you something? When's the last time you ate? I mean, really ate, not just pushed food around your plate." The question was so unexpected that Eden almost laughed. I ordered a salad earlier, but you were too nervous to eat it. First date nerves. I remember those." Something flickered across his face. A memory, perhaps, though Eden couldn't read it. "How about we start over? Pretend the last 20 minutes didn't happen. Hi, I'm Calvin, and I was just about to order the best lasagna in Chicago. Would you like to join me? No pressure, no expectations, just two people sharing a meal. Eden looked at this stranger who'd stood up for her, who was now offering her kindness instead of pity. Why? She asked. Why would you do this for someone you don't know?
Calvin was quiet for a moment, his fingers drumming lightly on the table. Because I have a 7-year-old daughter at home named Violet, he said finally, and last week she came home crying because a boy told her that her homemade dress wasn't as pretty as the other girls' store-bought ones. I held her while she cried, told her she was perfect, exactly as she is. But tonight, sitting here, hearing what that man said to you, I realized I can't just tell Violet to stand up for others. I have to show her. Eden felt fresh tears forming, but these were different. She sounds lucky to have you. I'm the lucky one, Calvin said, and there was something in his voice, a weight, a story, that made Eden want to know more. He saved me in ways she'll never understand. Before Eden could ask what he meant, an older man with silver hair and kind eyes approached their table. Mr. Castellano, the owner, set down 2 plates of steaming lasagna without being asked. On the house, he said, with a thick Italian accent, anyone who stands up to bullies eats free in my restaurant. He winked at Eden. And you, pretty, you deserve better than that stronzo. Eat. The food here heals hearts, I promise. As Mr. Castellano walked away, Calvin picked up his fork. He's right, you know, about the lasagna, and about deserving better. Eden took a tentative bite, and the flavors exploded on her tongue. Rich tomato sauce, perfectly seasoned meat, creamy cheese. It was comfort in food form. This is incredible. Wait until you try the tiramisu, Calvin said with a small smile. Violet makes me order it every time we come here, which is every Tuesday. It's our tradition since... He paused, that shadow crossing his face again. It's our tradition. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the normal sounds of the café returning around them. Eden found herself stealing glances at Calvin. He was handsome in an understated way. Strong jaw, kind eyes, laugh lines that suggested he used to smile more than he did now. There was a pale band of skin on his ring finger, where a wedding ring used to be. Can I tell you something? Eden said suddenly. This was my 3rd first date in 2 years. The first guy told me I'd be prettier if I lost 30 pounds. The second one spent the entire dinner showing me photos of his ex-girlfriend, who was a fitness model. Calvin set down his fork. Can I tell you something in return? Those weren't dates. They were auditions with men who think women are accessories. Real dating, real connection, is finding someone who sees you, not your dress size, not your job title, not what you can do for them, just you.
Speaking from experience, Eden asked gently. Calvin's hand unconsciously went to that pale band on his finger. My wife, Brooke, used to say that love wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone whose imperfections you could live with, and who could live with yours. He took a breath. She passed away 18 months ago. Complications during routine surgery. An allergic reaction no one could have predicted. Eden's hand moved across the table instinctively, stopping just short of his. I'm so sorry. She would have liked you, Calvin said, surprising himself with the admission. She was a pediatric nurse, actually, always standing up for kids who couldn't stand up for themselves. I'm a pediatric nurse, Eden said softly, at Children's Memorial. Calvin looked at her with renewed interest. Really? That's where Brooke worked. 3rd floor, oncology. I'm on the 5th floor, NICU, Eden said. I probably passed her in the elevators 100 times. They both sat with that strange coincidence for a moment. The world suddenly felt smaller, more connected. Tell me about Violet, Eden asked, wanting to see the light return to his eyes. And he did. Calvin's entire demeanor changed when he talked about his daughter. She's 7 going on 35, loves art, hates math, insists on wearing tutus to grocery stores. She's teaching herself piano from YouTube videos because she wants to surprise me for my birthday. I pretend I don't hear her practicing when I'm cooking dinner. I found myself genuinely laughing for the first time all evening. She sounds amazing. She is, but it's been hard. She asks about her mom less now, which somehow hurts more. Like she's forgetting, or trying to protect me by not bringing her up. He pushed the lasagna around his plate. I've been doing my best. Learned to braid hair from online tutorials. Figured out the difference between ballet and tap shoes. But there are things I can't teach her. Things only another woman could.
You're doing better than you think, Eden said. The fact that you stood up for a stranger tonight, that tells me everything about the kind of father you are. Calvin studied her face. Can I confess something? I've eaten here every Tuesday for 6 months. Same booth, same meal. This is the first time I've had a real conversation with anyone besides Mr. Castellano. Why Tuesdays? It was Brooke's favorite day. She said Mondays were too harsh, Wednesdays were too middle, and Fridays were too expected. But Tuesdays were full of possibility. He smiled sadly. We had our first date on a Tuesday. Found out we were pregnant on a Tuesday. She died on a Tuesday. Eden did reach for his hand then, covering it gently with hers. And you stood up for a stranger on a Tuesday. Calvin turned his hand palm up, letting their fingers intertwine briefly before pulling back. I should probably tell you, I'm not ready for anything. I mean, I can barely manage to keep Violet in matching socks most days. I'm not exactly relationship material. Who said anything about a relationship? Eden replied, though something in her chest tightened. Maybe I just need a friend who understands that sometimes the world feels too heavy. Maybe you need someone who won't judge you for serving cereal for dinner when you're too tired to cook. Violet told the neighbors we had breakfast for dinner 3 times last week, Calvin admitted with a sheepish grin. They talked until the café started closing. Eden learned that Calvin worked as an architect, designing schools and community centers, buildings meant to bring people together. He learned that she'd been engaged once to a man who constantly criticized her appearance until she'd finally found the courage to leave.
The worst part wasn't even the comments about my weight, Eden said, pushing the last of the tiramisu around with her spoon. It was that I started believing them, started seeing myself through his eyes instead of my own. Calvin understood that too well. Some days he looked in the mirror and saw only what was missing: Brooke's partner, Violet's mother, the other half of every decision. Mr. Castellano approached their table one last time. We're closing, but you two stay as long as you need. Love doesn't follow restaurant hours. Oh, we're not, Eden started. Just friends, Calvin finished quickly. Mr. Castellano smiled knowingly. Of course, just friends who look at each other like they've found water in the desert. He walked away, humming an old Italian love song. They exchanged numbers in the parking lot, standing between their cars under the yellow streetlight. Calvin's was a practical SUV with a baby on board sticker that read, "Former baby, current chaos," in Violet's handwriting. Eden's was a small sedan with a hospital parking pass hanging from the mirror. Thank you, Eden said, for everything, for standing up to Trevor, for dinner, for making me feel like a person again. You were always a person, Calvin said firmly. Anyone who made you feel otherwise was wrong. As Eden drove home to her apartment, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not for romance necessarily, but for the possibility that there were still good people in the world. People who stood up instead of looking away. But when she got home and saw her reflection in her bedroom mirror, Trevor's words came flooding back. Too fat, bad for business, not what I expected. She stood there in her blue dress, the one she'd been so excited about, and suddenly saw everything wrong with it. With her. With the foolish hope that someone like Calvin could actually want someone like her. For the next 3 days, Calvin texted. Simple things. A photo of Violet's latest art project, a dinosaur wearing a tutu, a joke about coffee being a food group, a question about her day. Eden would type responses, then delete them. What could she say? That she'd spent her lunch break crying in a supply closet? That she'd called in sick to work because the thought of pretending to be okay felt impossible? On day 4, Calvin called. Eden let it go to voicemail. Hey, Eden, it's Calvin. I just wanted to make sure you're okay. Anyway, I'm probably overstepping, but
I wanted you to know that Tuesday meant something. Not in a pressure way, just, it was nice to talk to someone who gets it. The grief thing, the feeling like you're not enough thing. Anyway, call me back if you want, or don't, but know that someone's thinking about you. Okay, I'm going to stop rambling to your voicemail now. Eden played that message 17 times. A week passed, then 2. Calvin kept sending texts, but they became less frequent, less hopeful. Eden wanted desperately to respond, but shame is a powerful prison, and she'd locked herself in tight. She stopped going to her usual grocery store, afraid she might run into him. She took different routes to work. She even avoided the street where Rosewood Café was located, as if proximity to that night might make her remember what hope felt like. 3 weeks after their dinner, Eden's best friend Amber showed up at her apartment unannounced. "Okay, enough," Amber said, pushing past Eden into the apartment. "You've been ghosting everyone, you look like you haven't slept in days, and I know something happened. Spill." So Eden told her everything. About Trevor, about Calvin, about the dinner, about the fear that Calvin's kindness was just pity. Amber listened, then smacked Eden gently on the arm. "You absolute idiot! A man stands up for you, spends hours talking with you, leaves you the world's most adorable voicemail, and you think it's pity? You didn't see how I looked that night, crying, mascara everywhere, and he still chose to sit with you. Eden, honey, pity doesn't call 3 weeks later. Pity doesn't text you dinosaur drawings. That's interest. That's care." But Eden couldn't shake Trevor's voice, couldn't stop seeing herself through his cruel lens. A month after their dinner, Calvin sent one final text. "Eden, I don't know what you're going through, but I want you to know something. That night at the restaurant, I didn't defend you out of pity. I defended you because what he said was wrong. You don't owe me anything. Not a date, not a response, not even an explanation. But if you ever want a friend, just a friend who sees you for who you really are, I'm here. No expectations, no judgments, just friendship." Eden cried for an hour. Then she texted back, "Coffee? Just as friends?" Calvin's response came in less than a minute. "Absolutely. You picked the place and time."
They met at a small coffee shop 3 days later. Eden had prepared a speech about not being ready, about needing to work on herself, but Calvin stopped her gently. "Eden, I meant what I said. Just friends. No pressure. I know what it's like to feel broken. After Brooke died, I didn't leave the house except for Violet's school stuff for 2 months. My sister had to literally drag me to grief counseling. Healing isn't linear, and it definitely isn't pretty. I've been skipping meals," Eden admitted quietly, "then eating everything in sight, then hating myself for both. It's like Trevor's voice is stuck in my head." Calvin nodded. "After Brooke died, I heard her voice everywhere. Except the voice in my head wasn't really her. It was my guilt talking, telling me I should have noticed something was wrong, should have insisted on a different hospital, should have been there instead of in the waiting room. The real Brooke would never have said those things." They met for coffee every week after that. Just friends. Calvin never pushed for more, never made her feel like she had to be anything other than herself. Some days Eden was chatty and bright. Other days she barely spoke. Calvin accepted both versions without question. After a month of coffee dates, Calvin invited her to Tuesday dinner at Rosewood Café with Violet. "No pressure," he said quickly. "Violet's been asking, and Mr. Castellano threatens to give away our booth if I don't bring the beautiful lady back." Eden was terrified. Meeting Violet felt huge, like crossing a line she couldn't uncross. But she said yes. Violet Rhodes was a force of nature. She had her father's brown eyes, but a spirit that was entirely her own. "Are you the lady who was sad?" Violet asked within 2 minutes of meeting Eden. "Violet!" Calvin looked mortified. "What? You said she was sad and that the mean man was a butthead." "I said he was not nice," Calvin corrected, his cheeks reddening. "Same thing," Violet said, then turned back to Eden. "I like your dress. It's blue like Elsa's, but better because it's real." And just like that, Eden fell a little bit in love with Violet Rhodes.
Dinner became a regular thing. Every Tuesday, the three of them at the corner booth. Violet would chatter about school, show Eden her drawings, demand that Mr. Castellano judge whose pasta-eating style was funniest. She never asked why Eden was there, never questioned the relationship. To Violet, Eden was simply someone who belonged at their table. "My mommy's in heaven," Violet announced one Tuesday, apropos of nothing. "Daddy says she watches us and makes sure we're okay." Eden glanced at Calvin, who looked frozen. "I'm sure she does," Eden said carefully. "Do you think she'd like you?" "I don't know," Eden answered honestly. Violet considered this. "I think she would. Daddy smiles more when you're here. Mommy always wanted Daddy to smile." Calvin excused himself to the bathroom, but Eden could see him wiping his eyes as he walked away. 3 months into their friendship, Eden had a bad week. A patient at the hospital, a premature baby she'd been caring for, didn't make it. The parents' grief triggered something in her, a rawness she thought she'd been managing. She canceled Tuesday dinner, saying she was sick. Calvin showed up at her apartment with soup. "I'm fine," Eden said through the door. "No, you're not, and that's okay. You don't have to let me in, but I'm leaving the soup outside. It's from Mr. Castellano. He says it cures everything except heartbreak, and even then it helps a little." Eden opened the door. She looked terrible, unwashed hair, red eyes, wearing the same pajamas for 3 days. "I lost a patient," she said simply. Calvin set down the soup and hugged her. Not a romantic hug, not a careful hug, but the kind of hug that holds you together when you're falling apart. Eden sobbed into his shoulder, and he just held on.
"The worst part," Eden said later, sitting on her couch with the soup between them, "is that the mom looked at me like I should have saved him, like I failed. And maybe I did." "You didn't fail," Calvin said firmly. "Sometimes horrible things happen despite our best efforts. Trust me, I've become an expert in horrible things that couldn't be prevented." They sat in comfortable silence, sharing soup and grief. "Can I tell you something weird? Sometimes I think Trevor did me a favor. If he hadn't been so cruel, you wouldn't have come over. We wouldn't be friends." "We would have found each other somehow," Calvin said with surprising certainty. "Violet says you were meant to be in our lives. She's usually right about these things. She predicted the neighbor's pregnancy and the school hamster's escape." Eden laughed, the first real laugh in days. "She's something special. She gets that from her mom." Then he paused. "But also from surviving loss. Kids are resilient in ways adults forget how to be." 6 months after that first Tuesday at Rosewood Café, Eden realized she'd fallen in love with Calvin. It wasn't dramatic or sudden. It was quiet, like finally noticing the sun had risen after a very long night. She loved how he danced terribly to Violet's favorite songs in the middle of Mr. Castellano's restaurant, not caring who saw. She loved how he still wore his wedding ring on a chain around his neck, not ready to let go completely, but moving forward anyway. She loved how he texted her bad architecture jokes and remembered how she took her coffee and never once in 6 months commented on what she ate or didn't eat. But more than that, she loved who she was becoming around him. Stronger, steadier, someone who could laugh at her own bad jokes and wear bright colors and eat tiramisu without calculating calories. The turning point came on a Tuesday in September. Violet had the flu, so it was just Calvin and Eden at dinner. "I have something to tell you," Calvin said, nervously fidgeting with his napkin. "I've been seeing someone." Eden's heart stopped. She forced a smile. "Oh, that's great. Who?"
Calvin looked confused. "What? No? I mean, seeing a therapist. About moving forward. About..." He gestured between them. "This. This? Eden. I'm falling for you. Have been for months. But I needed to make sure it wasn't just loneliness, or Violet needing a mother figure, or me trying to save someone because I couldn't save Brooke. My therapist says those would all be wrong reasons." Eden could barely breathe. "And what did you conclude?" "That I'm falling for you because you're you. Because you make Violet laugh. Because you understand that grief doesn't have an expiration date. Because you're the first person I want to tell when something good or bad happens.
Because you've seen me at my worst, crying over Brooke's pictures, snapping at Violet when I'm overwhelmed, and you still show up every Tuesday. Calvin, I know, you might not feel the same way. I know you're still healing from what that ass said to you, from your ex, from all of it. I'm not asking for anything to change. I just needed you to know that when I look at you, I don't see any of the things those idiots made you believe about yourself. I see someone brave and kind and beautiful, exactly as you are. Eden reached across the table and took his hand. I need to tell you something, too. I'm terrified, not of you, but of believing this is real. Every relationship I've had, I've been too much or not enough, too emotional, too fat, too imperfect. You're not too anything, Calvin said firmly. You're just right. For us, you're just right. I love Violet. I need you to know that this isn't just about you. I love her too. She loves you back. Yesterday she asked if you could teach her how to braid hair because YouTube doesn't explain it right. Eden laughed through tears she hadn't realized were falling. I'm ready to stop being just friends, if you're still interested. Calvin squeezed her hand. I've been interested since you smiled at Violet's dinosaur drawing, but I wanted you to choose us because you were ready, not because you felt obligated. I choose you. Both of you. All of it. Tuesday dinners and terrible dancing and grief that sometimes shows up uninvited and Violet's tutus and Mr. Castellano's knowing looks.
Their first kiss was right there in Rosewood Café, with Mr. Castellano openly weeping and other diners applauding. It tasted like tiramisu and possibility. If you're wondering how broken people build something whole, it looks like this. Slowly, carefully, with plenty of setbacks and small victories that no one else sees. Calvin and Eden dated for a year before he proposed. He did it at Rosewood Café, of course, on a Tuesday, with Violet holding the ring box and Mr. Castellano live-streaming it to his family in Italy. Eden, Calvin said, down on one knee while Violet bounced excitedly beside him. You turned our Tuesday dinners into something magical. You've shown Violet that family isn't just about who you're born to, but who you choose. You've shown me that love isn't about finding someone to replace what you've lost, but finding someone who helps you carry it. Will you marry us?
Say yes,
Violet shouted. I already told everyone at school you're my almost mom. Eden said yes, laughing and crying simultaneously. They married the following spring in a small ceremony. Violet was the flower girl, insisting on wearing her favorite tutu over her dress. Mr. Castellano catered, declaring it his gift to the couple who restored his faith in love. In his vows, Calvin said, Eden, you didn't fix me. I wasn't broken, just grieving. But you sat with me in that grief, made space for it at our table. You loved Violet before you loved me, which told me everything about your heart. You've taught us that families can be built from loss and still be beautiful. Eden's vows included, Calvin, Violet, you gave me something I'd stopped believing I deserved. Acceptance without conditions. You've never asked me to be smaller, quieter, or easier. You've loved me through bad days and good ones. Violet, thank you for sharing your daddy with me, and for teaching me that tutus make everything better. There wasn't a dry eye in the house.
Today, 4 years later, they have Violet, now 12 and fierce in her defense of anyone being bullied, and twin boys, Marcus and James, who are 3 and believe their biggest sister is an actual superhero. Eden still has bad days. Sometimes she looks in the mirror and hears Trevor's voice, but then Calvin will wrap his arms around her from behind and whisper all the things he loves about her body. How it grew their children, how it cares for sick babies, how it fits perfectly against his when they sleep. Violet, now old enough to understand the full story, once asked Eden, "Do you ever wish that mean man hadn't said those things?" Eden thought carefully. "No, baby, because if he hadn't, your dad might not have stood up. We might not have become friends. you and I might never have met. So sometimes bad things lead to good things? Sometimes, Eden agreed, but only if you're brave enough to keep your heart open, even when it hurts. Calvin often thinks about that month when Eden didn't answer his calls. He understands now that she needed that time, needed to make the choice to heal for herself, not for him. He's learned that love isn't just the grand gesture of standing up to a bully. It's the daily choice to be patient, to be present, to love someone through their own journey of learning to love themselves. Mr. Castellano still tears up when they come in for Tuesday dinners, now a party of 5. He's framed a photo from their wedding on his wall of fame, right next to a review that mentions his restaurant as the place where love stories begin. Mr. Hutchinson, according to social media, is still single. But this story was never about him. He was just the catalyst, the moment of cruelty that sparked an act of kindness that grew into something beautiful.
Some people might say Calvin saved Eden that night, but the truth is, they saved each other. Eden brought light back into a home shadowed by grief. Calvin gave Eden a safe place to heal and be herself. And Violet got a mom who chose her, who shows up for every recital and school play and Tuesday dinner, who proves that families aren't just made by blood, but by choice and commitment, and love that sees past the surface to the soul beneath. If you've ever been told you're not enough, if you've ever felt like your flaws disqualify you from love, remember Eden's story. Remember that somewhere, someone is waiting to love you, not despite your imperfections, but because your imperfections make you real, make you human, make you exactly who they need. Love doesn't always come when we're ready for it. Sometimes it shows up when we're at our lowest, wearing a stained shirt and no makeup, crying over the cruelty of strangers. Sometimes it looks like friendship first, like patient texts and Tuesday dinners, and someone who sees you, really sees you, and doesn't look away. Calvin still keeps that first receipt from their dinner, the one Mr. Castellano refused to let them pay. On it, Calvin had written, "The night everything changed." Eden found it once while organizing his desk and added her own note, "The night I started believing in good people again." They've shared their story with others now, especially Rhodes' friends who come to her when they're being bullied about their weight or appearance. Calvin and Eden open their home, serve Mr. Castellano's lasagna, he delivers, and remind these young girls that their worth isn't determined by the cruel words of small-minded people. Last month, a young woman approached Eden at the hospital. "Are you the Eden from Rosewood Café, the one whose husband stood up to that terrible guy?" Eden smiled. "How did you know?" "Mr. Castellano tells everyone that story. I just wanted to say, I was in a similar situation last week. A guy told me I was too ugly to date. But I remembered your story, and instead of believing him, I stood up and left. I'm worth more than that." "Yes," Eden said, hugging this stranger, "you absolutely are." That's the thing about kindness. It ripples outward in ways we never see. Calvin's decision to stand up for a stranger created waves that are still moving through the world, touching lives, changing stories, reminding people that they deserve to be defended, to be chosen, to be loved exactly as they are. Every Tuesday, when the Rhodes family enters Rosewood Café, Mr. Castellano rings a little bell he keeps by the register. Regular customers know what it means. The couple who proved love stories can begin with tears and end with joy has arrived. Sometimes tourists ask about it, and Mr. Castellano tells them the whole story, embellishing a little more each time. "Love," he says in his thick Italian accent, "doesn't always look like movies. Sometimes it looks like shedding soup when you're sad. Sometimes it looks like patient friendship. Sometimes it looks like standing up for a stranger because it's the right thing to do." Violet, wise beyond her years, recently wrote an essay for school about her family. In it, she wrote, "My first mom gave me life and taught me to be brave through how she lived. My second mom chose me and taught me to be brave through how she loved. My dad taught me that the smallest act of kindness can change everything. We're not a perfect family, but we're perfect for each other."
Her teacher cried reading it. So did Eden when Violet brought it home. As for Calvin and Eden, they've learned that love isn't about finding someone without baggage. It's about finding someone whose baggage fits well with yours. They've built a life that honors the past while embracing the future, that makes space for grief and joy simultaneously, that proves broken hearts can heal stronger than before. Sometimes Eden still struggles with her body image. Sometimes Calvin still dreams about Brooke and wakes up feeling guilty for being happy. Sometimes Violet wishes she could remember her birth mother better, but they've learned that loving someone means loving their ghosts too, making room at the table for all the parts of their story. If you take anything from this story, let it be this: you are not too much. You are enough. You are exactly right for someone who will see your worth, who will defend your dignity, who will choose you again and again, on good days and bad ones. Love doesn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it's as quiet as someone saying, "May I sit?" when the world has been cruel. Sometimes it's patient friendship that slowly becomes more. Sometimes it's choosing to believe you deserve kindness, even when cruel voices in your head say otherwise. But this story isn't just about finding a good man. It's about Eden finding herself, finding her worth, finding the courage to believe she deserved love. It's about Violet finding a mother who chose her. It's about a family built from loss that became something beautiful.
The last thing Calvin said to Trevor that night was, "She's beautiful. You're just too shallow to see it." He was right. Eden was beautiful, not because of her dress size or despite it, but because of her kindness, her resilience, her ability to love even after being hurt. Trevor couldn't see it because he was looking at the surface. Calvin saw it because he was looking at her soul. And that makes all the difference. So if you're watching this, wondering if you'll ever be enough, if anyone will ever see your worth, remember Eden's story. Remember that Tuesday at Rosewood Café. Remember that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the door to the best thing. Your Tuesday is coming. Your Calvin or your Eden is out there. Your Mr. Castellano is keeping a table warm for you. Your Violet is waiting to love you unconditionally. Don't give up. Don't let the Trevors of the world convince you that you're too much or not enough. You're exactly right for the life that's waiting for you, for the love that's looking for you, for the family you're meant to